So today, I'm going to be talking about what we're calling the OCP Data Center Sustainability Standard Initiative. And before I get going, a little bit about myself. I'm Aryn. I'm a mechanical engineer. I have about 13 years of experience in the industry. Right now, provide consulting engineering services at Northshore, focus on energy efficiency and optimization, capacity optimization of data centers. So the initiative can be broken down into two parts. First, the effort's going to be to open up the data flow between the different tools that we use for design, construction, analysis, and operations of data centers. Specifically, it's going to be with BIM, CFD, and Revit, or BIM, CFD, and energy. And the tools that we'll be using is Revit, RoboNet, and Six Sigma DCX. For the data flow between the different tools, or between Revit and RoboNet, we'll be focusing on using Excel to pass facility asset data back and forth. Excuse me. And between RoboNet and Six Sigma, we'll utilize OpenDCRE for the protocol to pass information automatically between the different models and platforms. Between Revit and Six Sigma, we're going to be using future facilities defined in XML file format so we can pass information back and forth. But what's missing is we don't have coordinated libraries to make it so this information can pass back and forth seamlessly. So it's going to be kind of the first big focus of this effort is to define those libraries and the data flow between the tools and models that we use. The second part of the initiative is we're going to define a rating system specific for the data center industry so that we can understand what are the optimal configurations of data centers based upon location and the type of data that you're going to be processing. Again, the goal of the initiative is to provide us the framework necessary for the industry to collaborate, optimize the energy efficiency and capacity of data centers. So why should we do this? The reason is we need to break down the silos within our industry so that we can collaboratively, again, optimize the infrastructure that we use. This is a chart courtesy of Autodesk that represents the value of the facility asset documentation through the life of a building. It also represents nicely the flow of data between the different phases too, and the loss of it as you go from design, from feasibility to construction to design and things like that. And we're focusing on specifically going from design and construction over to operations, and that loss of data, again, with as-builts being as awful as they are, and the information going between the two different life cycles of the phases. Oop. Second is the application of standards and rating systems, specifically LEED and ASHRAE, to data centers that are really meant for generic commercial buildings and aren't sophisticated enough to really accurately represent the efficiency and the optimal capacity of the data centers, which is what all we need to be able to build the best infrastructure that we can as a team. So this visual represents, each one of the circles represents the different engineering services that we provide. And the lines between the circles represents that flow of data between the services. The thickness of the lines represents the value of that information that can be passed back and forth. The lines that are in red, that information is basically done manually. We type it in, copy and paste and things like that. The gray lines are basically the data, we don't do it. Like for example, we're working on using virtual reality for, in the built environment, but we don't really do that right now. And the goal of the initiative will ultimately to be able to turn all these lines green to represent so that they're automatic and the data flows passes seamlessly. And so if you could imagine your CFD modeler or your energy modeler or your mechanical engineer or your electrical engineer being able to automatically within hours be able to look at the data and the patterns of the information that really matters to them so they can make the best decisions moving forward versus spending weeks, months, and days rebuilding these models over and over and over again. So what are we going to deliver for the initiative? Our goal is by next year, this time at this summit, we'd like to give another presentation on the progress of what we've done. We want to build the first iteration of what's called we're going to call the OCP standardized shared parameters for Revit, so for your BIM models. We're also going to provide a sample of OCP equipment within the different equipment libraries within the different tools that we use. Again, specifically Revit, Six Sigma, and RoboNet. We'd love to include other tools and other types of analysis, but we're just stretched a little too thin to do that. And so, again, so in the top left, we'll have, it's a representation of a BIM model and being able to walk through it in virtual reality. The next one over to the right is the airflow, which is what we use for CFD. There's also DCIM tools that we like to tap into, and then Romanet's in the middle for being able to do energy analysis. And we also want to include the use of 3D scanning, specifically Matterport's camera, or the Matterport camera, for being able to do measurement verification of the design documentation and compared to reality. And last but not least, we're going to define a rating system that doesn't suck for us and is useful for us to be able to go through and understand what are the best data centers that we can build as a team collaboratively. Got to give a huge thanks to my business partner, Matt Renner, for helping me get the stuff going, and his brother Luke for putting the presentation together. Romanet's been a tremendous supporter of us, providing us trainings and support for the projects that we work on. Also, Future Facilities. Those guys are incredible. Their CFD software is what we need to be able to understand the airflow in data centers. Brightworks is also here. That's going to be helping us out with building this initiative. And then DPR also showed up, who's been doing much more work in the virtual reality realm and augmented reality, which we ultimately want to be able to pull this stuff into for being able to do the analysis that we'd like to do. Raw Systems has also been a huge supporter of us, and again, in Alpha Tech too. And then also OpenRFA. Oh man. With that, I'm gonna say thank you to you guys. And if you guys want to if you're interested and want to get involved, just give me a shout. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question. Hey, what would be the best way to participate?
So the best way to participate is to help us out either with doing pilots. We need it for defining each one of these different measures. Like, for example, the shared parameters for Revit. We need pilot projects so we can take our time and iteratively figure out what those shared parameters are going to be. And we need clients and teammates that are going to have a thick skin to go through that process because it's boring. The other part too is if you guys are connected with your manufacturers or your vendors, we need those libraries built. The work is painful, it's boring, it's hard, but if we get those libraries built, we get it so that all of us can use the tools much more faster than what we do now.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
How do you protect the intellectual property between the different data center builders?
The intellectual property for...
So with the concern of intellectual property, right? Like so many data centers try to customize their own HVAC systems and, restrict people from talking about that. How do you protect that intellectual property with getting into these larger libraries?
We don't. We share it. If you want to keep your own stuff to yourself, that's cool, but you're not helping us out and we won't be able to help you out. We have to share this information. We have to share designs. We can't be selfish on this. We got to work together as a team.
Just to make sure I understand, you're looking to see if you can start standardizing the BIM models of a lot of the components for the open compute in particular gear or data center facility gear in general?
Ultimately, we're going to start with open compute gear because not the brown nose, but it is the best equipment that you can use for your data centers.
Okay.
We want to make sure that equipment, the specifications, the performance of the stuff that we use are in the hands of the engineers for their analysis, and so they can pick and choose what's going to be best for their specific design. We ultimately like to do everything because
Sure, yeah.
we need it, but that's going to take time.
So is the idea, so if you do everything, right, every manufacturer's product has their own BIM model with probably different parameters and stuff, but you'd like to say, well, here's the standard of parameters that everybody should have across the board. That's one of the goals?
Yep.
And will these BIM models live, like the manufacturer will just do it and meet the standard, or are you going to have a library that's publicly available, or what's the thoughts there?
We're going to build a library and make it publicly available. We're going to team with basically BIM content providers. We'll work to define how those families should be built and how they should perform within the projects themselves. We'll develop templates for them, and then we'll work with companies like BIM Object or Sambeo, folks like that, to be able to mass produce the libraries too. The other part of it too, again, the company OpenRFA is going through and defining the shared parameters that we need for these to work. Stuff's a pain in the ass. Right now, it's the Wild West. And so, and what's even more mundane but very critical is he's also building the tools so we can swap out those shared parameters within our projects and within our libraries without having to do it manually every single time and be able to maintain that data. It's a very small detail, but it's going to make a huge difference in our ability to iteratively build these libraries that we need.
All right. And one last comment, maybe somebody else might have a little more information, but I recently, within the past month, I heard that IEC, and I think particularly in France, is actually starting to work to define standard parameters around BIM. So that's something we definitely wouldn't want to get disconnected from, because if all of a sudden an IEC standard comes out for BIM parameters and we're different, then we're back to the Wild West. So I just want to make sure that maybe somebody who's in the know over there kind of gets connected with you guys and make sure that's driven maybe in the direction that you're going.
Okay, yeah, that would be great, because a lot of the standards that are working on now, they're trying to do it more for like governmental agencies. But what they're missing is, again, they're not connecting their BIM models to your analytical tools. Again, we're using Romanet because they're energy modeling specific for data centers, and then we're using Six Sigma because they're CFD modeling for data centers. There's tons of other tools that we want to incorporate into this process. Again, being able to pull these models and families into the Oculus Rift or to the HTC Vive to be able to visualize it. We have to test doing that to make it work before we define the parameters ahead of time. So.
I know Romanet. I saw Romanet years ago. I saw a Romanet presentation years ago. It was more to the guys, the data center owners, nothing to do with OCP. But they were talking about life cycle costing and the cost of building these data centers. And so that's part of this?
Yes.
Maintenance and everything.
Yeah, maintenance and everything, because I'm passionate about energy efficiency. It's the whole reason why I got into this industry, was the amount of energy we can save. But for data centers, that's not the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's capacity. These data centers cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build. And so, and there's tens of millions of dollars that are spent on per data center for the utility use, but they also produce hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for our clients. So if we can optimize just the capacity by 1%, that's a massive amount of savings for our clients. And so, it's great if we can do it by saving energy too. The two kind of go hand in hand, but it's not the end all be all. Anything else? Cool. Thank you, guys.